Trust is supposed to be natural. Infants reach for their mothers without question. Children believe what they're told. We are wired from birth to connect, to rely, to open. And yet, so many of us now move through life with our hands halfway extended, ready to pull back, ready to protect. If trust is innate, why does it feel so dangerous? If connection is human, why do we keep our distance? What if the question isn't whether people are trustworthy? What if the question is, what happened to make you believe they're not? There's a child. Let's say she's 7. She tells her mother something important, a fear, a hope, something small but real. And her mother is distracted. She nods, but she doesn't hear. The child notices, not consciously, but somewhere inside, a note is made. My words don't land. A few years later, she learns something else, that people say things they don't mean. I'll always be here. You can tell me anything. I promise. And then they leave, or forget, or change their minds without warning. Slowly, without anyone teaching her, she learns that trust is not safe, that opening is not rewarded, that vulnerability is a wound waiting to happen. By the time she's grown, the lesson is complete. She doesn't trust easily. She keeps people at arm's length. She watches for signs, red flags, inconsistencies, anything that proves she was right to hold back. And when people ask why she's so guarded, she doesn't know how to explain. Because trust didn't break in one moment. It eroded. In 1,000 small disappointments, in the space between what was promised and what was given. And now, the scar tissue has become her skin. Let's start at the beginning. We are born trusting. Psychologists call it secure attachment. The belief that when you cry, someone will come. When you reach, you will be held. The world is safe because someone makes it safe. This is the foundation of everything, not just relationships, but your entire sense of self. Because when a child is met with consistency, when their needs are acknowledged, when they are allowed to be vulnerable without shame, they learn something essential. I am worth protecting. My feelings matter. It is safe to need. But when that doesn't happen, when the parent is inconsistent, when emotions are met with dismissal or anger or absence, the child learns something else. Needing is dangerous. Showing weakness invites pain. I am only safe when I am alone. This is where distrust begins. Not in adulthood, not in romantic betrayals or broken friendships, but in the earliest moments of life, when trust was needed most and wasn't there. And so a pattern forms. The child becomes an adult who expects disappointment, who scans every relationship for danger, who believes people will leave, so why get close? who thinks trust is naive, vulnerability is weakness, and being guarded is wisdom. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, the constant state of watching, waiting for the other shoe to drop, preparing for betrayal before it happens. And it makes sense. If you were hurt when you were unguarded, the logical response is to never be unguarded again. But the more you protect yourself, the more isolated you become. Because trust requires risk, and risk requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like handing someone a weapon. So you don't trust your partner when they say they love you. You wait for proof, for consistency, for years of evidence. And even then, a part of you holds back. You don't trust friends when they say they care. You assume they'll disappear, or that you're too much, or that they're only there because they haven't seen the real you yet. You don't even trust yourself, your own feelings, your own perceptions, because if you couldn't trust the people who were supposed to protect you, how can you trust your judgment about who is safe? And so you live in permanent distance, close enough not to be alone, far enough not to be hurt. And you tell yourself this is strength, this is control, this is survival. But underneath, you know what it really is. Loneliness, dressed as safety.
But it's not just personal history. The world today makes trust harder than ever. Relationships used to be slow. You met people through family, school, or community. You saw them regularly. You couldn't just disappear. Now, relationships are fast. You meet online. You talk intensely for a week, and then they vanish. No explanation, no closure, just gone. We call it ghosting, but it's more than that. It's a culture where people have become disposable, where intimacy is replaced by options and depth is sacrificed for convenience. Every time someone disappears without warning, every time someone says one thing and does another, every time you're left guessing what you did wrong, the lesson is reinforced. People are not safe. And it's not just romance. Friendships, too. Someone says, "We should hang out," but they never follow through. You wonder what you did, or whether you matter at all. Most people aren't malicious. They're overwhelmed, distracted, pulled in 1,000 directions. But the effect is the same. You feel unimportant, forgettable, easily replaced. So you stop initiating. You wait for others to prove they care. And when they don't, you tell yourself, you were right all along. Then there's social media, the performance of connection. We think we know people because we see their lives online, but we don't. We see their highlight reels, their masks, their best angles. And when we compare our inner chaos to their outer calm, we feel even more alone. We start performing too, posting the version of ourselves most likely to be validated, hiding the parts that feel too raw, too real, too human. And in doing so, we stop being known. We become avatars. And avatars cannot be trusted because avatars aren't real. We are surrounded by people, yet we don't trust any of them because we've learned that people lie, people leave, people perform. And even the ones who stay, we're not sure what they want. So we keep our distance, just in case. Trust becomes the exception. Loneliness becomes the norm. Here is the paradox of distrust. We stop trusting not because people are universally dangerous, but because being vulnerable once felt too costly. So we build walls. We create tests. We wait for people to prove themselves again and again. But the walls we build to keep pain out also keep connection out. The tests we create to protect ourselves ensure no one ever gets close enough to pass them. We think we're being careful. We think we're being wise. But what we're really doing is making sure we never risk being hurt again. And the cruelest part is this: the more we protect ourselves, the lonelier we become. The safer we feel, the more isolated we are. Because trust is not about certainty. It's not about guarantees. It's about choosing to believe even when you cannot be sure. If the risk feels too great, then no one will ever be close enough to betray you. But no one will ever be close enough to hold you either. The question isn't whether people are trustworthy. The question is, are you willing to risk finding out? Because the alternative is a life where you are never disappointed, never betrayed, never abandoned, but also never known, never held, never loved in the way that requires you to be seen. And that is its own kind of wound.
There's a moment, sometimes, when you realize you've been holding your breath for years, waiting for the hurt that hasn't come yet, preparing for the loss before it happens. And you wonder, what would it feel like to exhale? Not to trust everyone, not to be reckless, but to allow, even for a moment, the possibility that someone could stay. Trust doesn't break in shouts. It breaks in whispers. In the quiet moments when you needed someone and they weren't there. But maybe it rebuilds the same way. Not in grand gestures, not in promises, but in small, quiet moments when you risk being seen and someone stays. Not because they have to, not because you convince them, but because they chose to. You don't have to trust everyone. You don't have to let everyone in. But maybe you can stop believing that everyone will leave. Maybe rebuilding trust begins not with believing others, but with believing that you deserve to be held without fear. That you are not too much. That you are not too broken. That you are not unworthy of staying. And maybe, just maybe, the walls you built to survive can become doors when you're ready.